Hello everyone, and welcome back to the third episode of IB History Haven. In today's episode, we will be covering Japan's involvement in the First World War. I hope you enjoy. Now, here are the reasons for Japan's entry into the First World War. Japan's involvement in World War I was primarily driven by a mix of strategic opportunity, alliance obligations, and imperial ambition. Although the main theater of the war was in Europe, Japan saw the conflict as a chance to expand its influence in East Asia and the Pacific. When the war broke out in 1914, Japan entered on the side of the Allies by declaring war on Germany, citing the terms of the 1902 Anglo-Japanese alliance. While Britain was primarily focused on the European front, it encouraged Japan to neutralize German naval and colonial threats in the Asia-Pacific region. Japan quickly moved to occupy German-controlled territories, such as the Shandong Peninsula in China and the Marshall Mariana and Caroline Islands in the Pacific. These actions were not driven by a desire to aid the Allies militarily in Europe, but rather to strengthen Japan's territorial and political position in the region. Foreign powers, especially Britain, initially welcomed Japan's support due to its naval protection of shipping routes in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, but soon grew wary of Japan's aggressive imperialist behavior in Asia.
As the war progressed, Japan capitalized on the distraction of the Western powers to push its own interests further. In 1915, Japan issued the 21 demands to the Chinese government, which, if accepted in full, would have effectively made China a Japanese protectorate. Although some of the demands were eventually withdrawn under international pressure, particularly from the United States, Japan still secured significant economic privileges in China. This marked a turning point in Japan's foreign relations. While it achieved short-term gains, it also alienated China and alarmed Western nations. The United States, which had growing interests in China under the open door policy, began to see Japan as a potential rival rather than a cooperative ally. Similarly, Britain grew more cautious in its diplomatic dealings with China despite the wartime alliance. Meanwhile, Japan experienced an economic boom in war years due to increased demands for goods and materials, turning it into a leading economic, industrial, and export economy in Asia. At the end of the war, Japan emerged as one of the victorious powers and participated in the Paris Peace Conference in 1919. It was awarded former German territories in the Pacific as the League of Nations mandates and gained control of the Shandong Peninsula. However, Japan's success in Shandong sparked outrage in China, contributing to the May 4th movement, a major nationalist protest against foreign interference. Furthermore, Japan proposed a racial equality clause to be included in the Treaty of Versailles, which was rejected largely due to opposition from countries like Britain and Australia. This rejection deepened Japan's sense of racial discrimination and international exclusion, despite having fought alongside the Allies. Although Japan had increased its privilege and territorial holdings, it was also becoming more isolated diplomatically, particularly from Western powers who began to view it as a growing imperial threat in Asia.